Hey, my crafting friends, if you love handmade, rustic, farmhouse Christmas decor, then come craft with me. I'm Sarah, and welcome to my channel, Primroselaneprims. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button so that you can craft with me in the future. And let's get right into these Christmas DIYs. For this DIY, we're going to be using this pack of icicles. These are from the Dollar Tree. They come 10 to a pack. As you can see, they're cute, they're pretty, but they are a little sharp on the ends here, so be careful, don't poke yourself. But we're going to turn these into some cute, grungy, primitive icicles. So to start off, I'm going to take my matte finish Mod Podge, and I'm just going to give my icicles a really good coat of this Mod Podge. Once I have them covered completely in my Mod Podge, I'm going to just take some ground cinnamon and I'm just going to completely cover the entire icicle with the ground cinnamon. And I'm just going to continue doing this with all 10 of my little icicles. Now, once I have all of them done, I'm going to go back in with my Mod Podge and I'm just going to give these a really good coat, completely covering them once again with the Mod Podge. This is going to smear it a little bit. It's going to be a little thick, but you want these completely covered and sealed to seal all that in the bottom. Then once it's completely covered, I'm just going to take and sprinkle just a little bit, not a full coating, not like we did the first time, just a little bit over the top, and then let all that dry. And what that'll do is once those completely dry, the bottom layer that's completely sealed will be darker, while as the cinnamon I sprinkled on the top will have a lighter. So it'll just give it a multi-tone effect to the grunging. Once these have completely dried, this is what they turn out looking like. You can see the multiple different colors. You can see the darker underneath and the lighter on top. And I did let these dry overnight because the Mod Podge was really thick on them and I wanted to make sure they were really good and dry. So I let them dry for quite a while. And now that they're dry, I'm just going to go through, I'm just going to rub off any excess cinnamon that might just be lingering there on top. That way I don't have cinnamon making a mess anywhere. But they're pretty sealed in. There's not a whole lot of excess coming off of these. Now for the hanger, I'm going to go in with this thinner jute twine, and I'm just going to cut a decent length and just tie this off in a knot, and that's going to be our little hanger. These come with like a silver little string, but I wanted to go with the more rustic twine. Now to embellish these a little bit, I'm going in with some homespun fabric, and I'm going to take this maroon and cream. It's a larger check homespun, and I'm just going to rip a thin strip. I'm not exactly sure the exact length, but it's just a really thin 1/2 inch or so strip. And I'm going to do the same with this dark green and cream homespun as well. And I'm going to put these two together, and I'm just going to kind of measure here, just kind of eyeball what would be good. It's about an inch and a half approximately. I didn't measure, but I just kind of went with what looked good with the size of the icicle. And I'm just going to cut off little strips like this, one of each color. And I'm just going to crisscross these over top of each other. And then add a little hot glue, and then glue those fabric strips right there to the top of our little icicle, kind of a little makeshift bow. Then to finish it off, I'm going to take one of these little rusty jingle bells. It's a really small one. You can find these on Amazon or Factory Direct. And I'm just going to hot glue it right in the center of my little grungy icicle. I think these turn out so cute. They're so prim and they smell so good. For this next DIY, I'm going to take these large plastic candy canes. These are actually ones from Walmart. They're $1.24 at Walmart. You can also find them at Dollar Tree, but they're a little cheaper at Walmart this year. So I'm going to take some of these and I'm going to pick some homespun fabric. I'm going to go in once again with the maroon and cream check and that dark green and green check. But you could pick any colors that you wanted that would suit your decor. You could do multiple colors if you wanted to do like a cream underneath and like a red stripe over top like actual candy cane. But I'm going to go in with these and I'm just going to take, this is very similar, exactly how you would do it with the small plastic candy canes to fabric, wrapping the fabric over them, except we're just doing it on a much bigger scale here. So I'm just going to hot glue my fabric to the end and I'm just going to start wrapping it right all the way up my entire candy cane. If you run out of fabric, no big deal. Just add a little hot glue, add another strip, and keep right on going. Once you reach the end of your candy cane, just snip out the excess, add a little hot glue, and then just wrap the end of that fabric right around the edge of the candy cane to finish it off. Nice and neat. And I'm going to do the same here with my green one because I want to make these in a couple different colors, a couple different options, different ways to do them. Now, to embellish these a little bit, I'm going to take this pine. This is just some wired pine. This might even be the stuff from Dollar Tree. I can't remember exactly where I got this from. But I'm just going to take and cut a couple pieces about 3 inches long each and just kind of twist them together in the middle to form an X. Just put them over top of each other and twist. Just give them a twist and it'll just secure them together so they don't come apart. Now I'm going to go in with some of my Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and I just want to add a little bit of flocking to this, faux flocking. And I'm just going to dry brush, lightly dry brush some of this chalk paint right over top of the pine. Give it that nice snow look without messy flocking. Take one of these rusty stars, and I already have some rusty wire that I put through the little hole that's in it, and I'm just going to put it right in the center of my pine, and I'm going to wrap my wire around to secure my star to the pine. That's going to secure my star to the pine, but it's also going to give me a way to wire my pine onto my little candy canes here, or I guess my big candy canes in this case. Just take, wrap it right around, and I'm wrapping it around real good, tying it off, twisting it off, I suppose would be better. And then I'm even going to add a little dab of hot glue here too, just to make sure it's extra secure, stays in place, doesn't twist around or move around on me at all. And gosh, watch those stars too, because when you put a little bit of hot glue on that metal, they can really heat up. If you're enjoying this video so far, I hope you'll give it a like, maybe share it with your friends. And also, I'm sure you've noticed YouTube has a new feature out called Hype. It's a way that you can support your favorite creators and content. It's completely free. If you just hit that Hype button, it just lets YouTube know you're enjoying the video and to share it with more people. It really helps my channel out. So if you're enjoying it, I hope you'll consider hitting that. And as always, if you haven't done so, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button. I would love to have you craft with me again in the future. Once I've got my pine all done and secured, wired onto my candy canes, I'm going to take these little paper tags that I get off of Amazon. These are really affordable. You can get a large pack for just a couple dollars. And I'm going to take my fine tip Sharpie marker and I'm just going to write December 25th on one. And you could write any saying you want to, December 25th. And I'm going to kind of rough it up a little bit here because we want it to look a little vintage and prim. And then on another tag, I'm going to write Let It Snow. Now, like I said, I just want to rough these up because I want them to look vintage, primitive, like the rest of the piece. So once I have them crinkled up a little bit here, I'm just going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm just going to go along the edges, a little darker on the edges with my antique wax and then a little lighter across the rest of it, just to give it that aged paper look. You could also use the distress ink if that's what you have on hand. I always say use what you have on hand. And I always have the Waverly Antique Wax because anybody who's watched me knows I love my Waverly Antique Wax. But you know, just use what you got, distress them a little bit, if you like the distressed look, that is. I just want mine to look like aged paper. They've been around a while. And I'm going to do both the fronts and the backs. And I'm going to go back in with my thinner jute twine here. I'm just going to cut a little decent piece here. I'm going to tie it onto my tag. And then I'm going to use that string and I'm going to tuck my tag right underneath the corner of my star here. And then I'm going to wrap the twine behind the star and tie it off so that that tag is on there good and secure. You won't actually see the twine at all. It's just kind of all tucked behind the star. This one here I kind of brought around and tied in the back of the candy cane, which you could do as well, depending on how wired down your star is. And then for this one, it was still kind of moving around a little more than I wanted, so I just added a little extra dab of hot glue there just to secure it down underneath that star so it stays in place. And look how cute these are. So cute, vintage, rustic. These are perfect. You could hang them on a peg on a shelf, prop them in a corner. These even look adorable on a wreath as an embellishment for a wreath. So many different ways you can use these and they just look pretty. Now for this DIY, I'm going to be using these little ceramic snowman ornaments. They're from Walmart. They're $2.14 this year for the Walmart, and they're about 6 inches tall. These are a pretty decent size ornament. And I thought they're so cute, just a little plain. So we're just going to give this little snowman a little makeover. So on the top here, it has this little hanger, wire hanger. It's down in the ceramic. And I'm going to cut this off. Well, I originally thought I could just clip this off nice and flush against his hat. Nope, That, of course, did not work out at all. It left these two little pokey things I just could not get down close enough that it didn't leave any sharp pokey things on the top, and I ended up having to pull them out. So save yourself the time if you pull these out. Don't just try to clip them, just pull them out to start with. Just slowly pull it out like I did on the second one here. I just pulled it out and it worked so much better. But we're going to give these a makeover, and I'm going to use these to sit on a shelf, but you could also leave this hanger on the top and put it on the tree as an ornament as well. You could still use it as an ornament. It would be really cute either way. So this one here you can see is the one I just pulled out to start with. So much easier, worked out a lot better. When you do pull these out though, they do leave a little bit of a white spot on the top where those came out, but no big deal, we will fix that. Now to embellish these, I'm going to do a couple different options here, show you a couple different ways to do these. So many different options. So the first one, I'm going to take this green, and it's a green and white homespun, and I just have a little strip here ripped. I think this was probably a scrap left over from something else that I had done, but it was perfect for this project. So I'm just going to take and I'm just going to wrap this around his little snowman head here and use it as his scarf. Just give it a tie and a knot. And I'm going to trim off the extra tails. I do want the tails to stay longer, and I'm going to just trim them off kind of close towards the bottom of the snowman. And of course it's the homespun, so I'm going to make sure that it is flattened out so you see those roughed up edges. Sometimes when you rip it, it likes to curl a little bit. Now for our other snowman, there was two options and I couldn't decide which one I liked best. I have the red and black buffalo check, and this is just from the Dollar Tree, which I think is really cute. And then I thought, you know what? I want to see what this looks like. And I really liked, oops, after I throw my snowman down, of course, the white and black also looks really cute. I couldn't decide which I liked better, but I ended up going with the red and black just because in my decor, I tend to use more of the red and black in my holiday decorating. But leave me a comment. Let me know which one you think would have been, if you like better, the red or black or the white and black. And just the same as I did with the homespun fabric, I'm just going to tie this in a knot here as his little scarf, and I'm going to leave my tails rather long down his front here. Now I want to add a little bit more embellishments to these little guys. So I'm going to start with my red scarfed little snowman first. And I'm just going to trim a little small piece of this wired pine. And this is some really longer scraggly stuff. So I'm just going to, make a mess by giving it a haircut here and get, pine trimmings everywhere. But it definitely was too long, too scraggly. I'm just taking my scissors, trimming it down to a much more manageable size. And I'm just going to kind of bend it in a small little U, and I'm going to hot glue it right here on the brim of his hat. Next, I'm going to take these little red pip berries that I have, and I'm just going to trim off one little bundle of the berries, just right, and I'm going to glue those little pip berries right in the middle of that pine on his hat. Now on his scarf, I'm going to take another one of these little small rusty jingle bells like I used in the icicles earlier, and I'm going to hot glue one of these little small bells right in the center over top that little knot where I tied his scarf. Now for my other snowman, I'm going to take this little scrap of the green and white that I cut off of his scarf tails, and I'm just going to tie it in a knot right in the center. Just give it one tie and pull it tight, and then just flatten out those edges. And that's just going to make a really small little fabric bow. Really easy, really simple, and a great way just to use up the little extra scrap there that came off of his scarf. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to hot glue that right to his hat. Now I'm going to take another one of these little pipberry bundles. I'm just going to take it apart till I have two little red berries. And I'm going to hot glue those berries right in the middle of our little fabric bow. My hot glue was still hot there, so I was just able to push them right in. And look, doesn't it kind of like resemble, reminds me of holly berries. That's what the green and those red ones. That's what I think of, holly. So I wanted to add a couple more berries to his scarf here. So I'm going to take some hot glue and I'm just going to glue these, kind of tuck them right in behind the knot of his scarf. I absolutely love how that red and green is just popping against the white. It's turning out even better than I hoped. And I'm going to take one of these rusty jingle bells again, and I'm just going to put that right in the center of the scarf knot right there by my little red berries. And his scarf wasn't quite hanging the way I wanted it to. So underneath there, I just added a little bit of hot glue to tack down the scarf tails so that they hung how I wanted them to. Look how cute. So after seeing the green, I decided I wanted to add a little bit more to this other one's scarf. So I took and cut another small piece of the pine, trimmed it up, and hot glued it right around the knot, right around the bell of it, around the scarf there, and then trimmed it up a little more. I didn't want it hanging over. I didn't want it overtaking the bell. I just wanted to add just a little bit more. It just didn't seem to be quite enough. And I think that did the trick. I think these are turning out so cute. Next, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in the color ink, and I'm just going to use the back of my paintbrush, and I'm just going to use that to dot 2 eyes. And then I'm going to give him just a few buttons right down the front. Every snowman needs little cool buttons, right? And look how adorable. I absolutely love how these are turning out. Now, our hat, that little place where it had shown a little bit of white underneath where we pulled out the hanger, just take a little bit of your paint, dab right down in that spot, and it just covers right up. You would never even know it was there. Now, like I said, you could also leave the hangers on, add a little piece of twine, and hang these right on the tree too, because these would be adorable, used as their intended purpose, as ornaments. But they're also large enough you can set them on a shelf, and they're adorable too. So multiple ways to use these adorable little ceramic glass snowmen. For this DIY, I'm going to be using some of these small plastic candy canes. And I'm going to take about 6 of these. I've got a huge tub of these. I buy these in bulk because I use so many of these. I make them for craft shows, the fabric wrapped ones, so I always buy a lot of them. But I'm going to take 6 of these plastic candy canes, and I don't need the top. We are going to be making some peppermint sticks. So I'm just going to trim off that top piece, the little hook, just using my wire cutters and snipping it right off. And for the most part, they snip off pretty easily. Clean break. Once I have this cut off, I'm going to go in with my canvas drop cloth. Now, this is just a regular painter's drop cloth, kind you can get at any hardware store, Amazon. And this is actually some scraps I had from other projects. This is a really good project to use any of those scraps up on that, you know, aren't big enough to do other stuff with, but are big enough to cut strips of. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just using these scraps that I had to rip strips of this drop cloth. You know, approximately 1/2 inch to 1 inch wide, because like I said, we're going to be making some peppermint sticks, and this is going to be the base. And I'm going to trim off this little thicker edge here. It was a little too thick. And of course you got to pull the strings because when you rip these drop cloths, they will fray big time. So just pull your little extra strings off. And mine's not uniform down the line. Some sections are a little wider than others, and that's okay. This is a really forgiving project. You're not going to notice, but you're going to wrap these, put a little hot glue on the end, secure it down, and wrap the whole stick in your drop cloth. Just add a little hot glue, fold it down and around to secure that end, and it kind of looks like a giant cotton swab at the moment. But continue doing that with all of your little peppermint sticks. Now, to give these the red striping, I'm going to go in with this small red and cream check homespun, and I'm just going to rip a really thin strip. You don't want your strip of this to be too wide. If it's too wide, it tries to take up too much of the cinnamon stick, and just wrap those around and hot glue on the end. Then, because I want these to be primitive, I'm going in with my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to dry brush a little bit of my antique wax around this just to give them a little bit of grunging, just a little bit of that nice grungy primitive look that I love. Now I'm going to take this Atlas mason jar. This was actually one of the Classico Italiano spaghetti sauce jars, and they have that. They're in those Atlas mason jars, and this is a perfect way to repurpose those jars because they're perfect jars for this. So I'm going to pop my cinnamon sticks. It's not cinnamon sticks, sorry, my peppermint sticks down in my jar, and I'm going to take my lid. And I'm just going to cut out a square that's large enough to go over top and hang over the edge. I want this to look like, you know, with the mason jars, and you put the fabric over the top and then put the lid around just to give it a little decoration. That's exactly kind of what I want this to look like. And I'm going to take my pinking shears and go around the edge, make the edge a little more decorative. And to secure it on top, I'm just going to add a little bit of hot glue and put my fabric right down on there. And then I'm going to screw my lid on. This is going to, you're still going to be able to open this jar. Now I'm going to take my thicker jute twine, this is from Walmart, and I'm just going to add hot glue and just wrap it a couple times around the band of that lid. And cut it off and secure it down. That's not going to stop it from opening. It's just on the band of the lid, so you can still open this jar up if you wanted to, say, add more, less, put different things in it. Now I wanted to add a tag, but the little paper tags I had were just a little too small. So with some cardstock here, I already had some that I had just traced out a while back. And I'm going to cut one of these out. You can always buy them, but You know, a lot of times I can just take a piece of cardstock and trace out the shape of a tag, and you can make your own and save yourself some money. Now these were a little bigger than what I was actually wanting, so no big deal. Just gonna give it a little trim. I'm just going to cut off, make it a little shorter here, and then trim up the sides to make it a little thinner, just so that the size matches my jar a little better. See, that's much better. Let's take my hole punch and add a little hole right in the top here. This is also a really easy way to make little homemade Christmas tags too for presents. Now on my tag, I'm going to write Peppermint sticks, 5 cents. I mean, everybody needs peppermint sticks for Christmas, right? I mean, leave a peppermint stick for old Saint Nick hanging on the Christmas tree. Now, of course, I want to wrap this up, and just like I did with the tags earlier in this video, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to dry brush it over there just to give it that antique paper look. Now I'm going to take my jute twine once again, and I'm going to tie my twine right to my tag, and I want to leave a little bit longer tails, and I'm just going to tie a little shoestring bow out of the tails of that twine. Add a little hot glue in the back and glue it right to the twine that's around my band, and there we go. An adorable little jar of peppermint sticks. Perfect to pop on a shelf, a tiered tray. Cute, easy, and budget friendly. Leave me a comment. Let me know which of today's crafts was your favorite and if you plan to try any of these. So that is it for today's video. I really hope you all enjoyed today's DIYs. If you did, don't forget to drop down and give this video a like, maybe share it with your friends. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button so you can craft with me again in the future. I would love to have you join me. And if you hit that little notification bell, YouTube will notify you every time I upload a video so that you don't miss out on any future fun, budget-friendly DIYs for around the home. So until next time, happy crafting, friends.